washed and everything else. Now I need to find the case. There we go. That's annoying. We're out. Theory, I could get a telehandler for the sheep farm now, because I've got the truck with the water tank on the back for water. The only other thing I need to move around there is the wool pallets and the hay. Yeah, Diana Mulder was Dr. Pulaski, I believe. And yeah, she was in the original series as well. Diana Mulder. I would have to look it up. Maybe next time when I get in the mood to buy some equipment, I'll buy a telehandler and sell this equipment from the sheep farm. So one of the reasons I went with the Lintrack for so long was because it has the four-wheel steering, and that can be quite a tight yard to manoeuvre in. But I got a water tank that attached to the back of the tractor, and the Lindner couldn't move it. This thing could barely move it, and I basically figured that I'm not sure whether the water tank had a problem with its weight, or whether it just didn't play well with the real fuel usage mod which I'm using. Which basically uses more fuel the more power you're trying to draw from the tractor. It also takes into account equipment power usage. So if you're using a high horsepower piece of equipment, you will, or powered piece of equipment, not so much ploughs and cultivators because you drag them behind you, so you're overcoming the friction. But if you're running a seeder or something else that uses the PTO to draw power off the tractor, then that piece of equipment will increase the fuel usage of the vehicle you're driving when you turn it on. And then after that, you've got to overcome the weight of the tractor and any hills that you're on. So some of the hills on this farm, they're not steep hills by a significant stretch, but they are they're those long hills that truckers don't like because it just drains the energy from the truck. And the further you have to go up them, the slower and slower you get. And they're those types of hills on this farm. Not steep, just long and slow. And so if you have barely sufficient horsepower to move a piece of equipment and you hit one of those hills, you're going to be doing 1-2 miles an hour by the time you get to the top. Okay, so we're back. Let's sneak in past the forks. We will turn the wheel the correct direction. Yeah, or not. Let's do that. There we go. Round. Scrape the tyre along the wall, because why not? Park that up in here. So, state of the farm is everything's fertilised. Nothing needs ploughed, everything's growing. Won't be able to harvest that from. I might buy that field, you know. Okay, let's do that. That's a wheat field. And we have GPS. Let's use it then. Goodness me. Oh yeah, now Tom Baker wasn't, well, I guess he was part of the original Doctor Who series, but he was not an original, you know, in the strictest sense of being original Doctor. I came into Doctor Who when John Pertwee was the Doctor. So I never knew William Hartnell as the Doctor. Patrick Troughton was before my time. I don't believe I ever saw the regeneration from Patrick Troughton to John Pertwee, but John Pertwee was established as the Doctor when I started watching the show. And then he was replaced by Tom Baker. Tom Baker was a good Doctor, and he ran for years. The problem with John Pertwee was the Time Lords had decided to punish the Doctor for meddling, and had taken away the dematerialization circuit on the TARDIS, so all of his adventures were on Earth. Tom Baker, they gave the Doctor his dematerialization circuit for for the TARDIS back because they needed his help, and because he did so well in that, he got to keep it, and then started exploring around the galaxy. After Tom, I believe it was Peter Davison, who as a Doctor was a rather weak character, I always felt. However, it went with the whole genre of each Doctor is completely different from the previous one. He was replaced by Colin Baker, who was very flamboyant, and after him was Sylvester McCoy, I believe. I may have missed one or two. Sylvester McCoy is an incredibly good actor. Unfortunately, he got incredibly bad writing, and the BBC really wasn't interested in investing money in the show anymore, and so the sets were old chalk quarries dotted around England. But as an actor, he was a very fine actor. He's played in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. He was Radagast, the guy who was hauled around on the sled by the team of bunnies. And I've actually met him in real life. But he was the last of the original run of Doctors. And was followed by one-off sort of Y2K special, which had one of the McGann brothers. I can't remember which one. I think there's about 3 of them. They're kind of the English version of the Baldwin brothers. There's loads of them, and they're all actors, and they all look fairly similar. After that, there was the break, and then we have the modern incarnation with the guy who played the rat on Harry Potter, and then Matt Smith. Did Peter Capaldi come after Matt Smith, or was there another one? Peter Capaldi, another very, very good actor. Unfortunately, I didn't rate the writing when he was on Doctor Who. He got some very poor stories, but he is a very fine actor. I've seen him in some other stuff. Doing this field the wrong way. I'm doing this field the wrong way. Should have gone across rather than up and down. David Tennant. I don't know. I was a little reticent of Matt Smith, and kind of in part was because he was very young as an actor. But I did come to enjoy his thing. Some of the stories were a little bit light-hearted and what have you, but he did bring a little bit of something to the role, which nobody else had done. And in a way, he was to Doctor Who what Michael Shanks was to Stargate SG-1. Everyone was very worried about casting him as Dr. Daniel Jackson because he was so young as an actor, and yet he nailed it. And for fans, that's what fans look for, is people who can nail the acting role. And it might not be what you think the role should be, but if someone can bring the role to life and make it theirs, people will generally accept that. They might not accept it initially. They might be a little bit reticent about, oh, I don't know about him playing that or whatever. But if the person comes in and just, you know, effectively lays claim to the part, then fans can be very forgiving. And, well, it's not quite the way I would have thought it, but this guy does it well. I mean, it's like all the people who've played Batman. There have been some people who play Batman and completely knocked it out of the park. There's others that have been okay, you know, that's a passable Batman, and there's been others who've been complete hopeless. You know, this is not the Batman I know. And the way this player, you know, this actor is playing him, it doesn't feel right, type of thing. Who's the other one? Yeah, we'll allow that. I'm guessing what is it? The moderating bot doesn't like Benedict Cumberbatch, and he is another really fine actor, and him and the guy who played the Hobbit really nailed that role. Yes. Yeah, I've liked him in pretty much everything I've seen, even as Khan in Star Trek, whatever it was, Beyond the whatever it is. He brings it when he plays it. I mean, even as Smaug, you didn't get to see him, but he has the weight to just nail it. He's in. I'm not sure if it's a TV movie or a TV series on one of the cable channels for Brexit. And I looked at it and I thought, who the heck's that? He looks familiar. And yet, oh, it's Benedict. And just him being there is probably going to make that show something worth at least looking at. Martin Freeman, yes. Okay, now has anyone seen, there's a video short on YouTube. If you look for Who-Trek, as what, not Who-Trek, Wholock, WHOLOCK, it's mixing, I think, scenes which had Matt Smith as Doctor Who and Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes. And the guy who did it, I mean, he's selling his skills as a video editor, but he has meshed the two shows together into a short, which ends up with Sherlock Holmes going for a ride on the TARDIS, and it's really well done. He did the actual video, and then he did a how I did it short as well. So you can see how he edited the video. He took things out, he altered the colour, to make it so that everything looked very much the same from both. By altering sort of the color on one video to the color on the other video, you could meld them together without it looking broken. And yeah, he did a great job on that. Worth looking up. Okay, so we just did that. This field is cheap and we can afford it. Let's have a look at... Oh, I'm not going to get... Am I... Yeah, I'm not going to get a chance to re-fertilise that. It needs ploughing, because I forgot to. So that's the first stage of fertilisation. Well, that'll just have to do. I also might look at that field over there. But for now... Bye. That's my field. So let's go over to 37. Oh, that's another field of stuff. And oh, you want that spread as well. So we can do that. Start. Narrow tyres on a Valtra T. Okay. Well, that's fair. That's actually one of the improvements they did to Farm Sim 17 at one point. One of the patches, they altered the contracts so that they would give you appropriate vehicles for doing field work when there were crops on the field. So you were now, and when we started out, you just got ordinary tractor with normal wheels. But now you actually get tractors with narrows for a job like this, which is quite good. I appreciate that level of detail. Ooh, what's going on in front of us? That looks like still saplings in that field. Yeah. That was the last patch of trees I chopped down. And in front of us is the only patch of trees left alive on this field from, or on this map from the original setup. K9, yes. Robot dog built by Tom Baker. I think it was built by Tom Baker. Might have been Romana who brought him with her. I can't remember. Because Tom Baker for a little while had a woman Time Lord with him. I believe her first incarnation was played by Mary Tam, and then she regenerated as Lala Ward, who Tom Baker married. I don't think the marriage lasted, but it went on for a time. Doctor Who himself kept K9 until he split with Sarah Jane, his longtime assistant, and she kept K9 when she left the show. But when Tom Baker was done, they kind of let K9 go too. there was a British comedian who used to do skits with, of Doctor Who, and at the time Tom Baker was the Doctor, and so he'd come on onto the scene at the beginning, near the beginning of the show as one of the early skits. Then he'd have this, he'd have the long scarf and a pair of knitting needles, and while he's doing the skit, he's knitting more of the scarf, and he'd come on later on and the scarf would be longer, and then close to the end of the show he'd do the final skit and he came on and the scarf disappeared off into the the wings of the stage. Yeah, she died very soon after she had breast cancer, I think. So that series didn't go on very long. So I'm not sure if we're going to get a chance to fertilise this field again. If we're not, then I'll buy this as well. I think I still got the money. But if it's only in the second stage of growth rather than the third, I may leave off and try and remember to fertilise it again. As it is, we're going to have to plough both of these fields when we buy them next season, or once they're harvested, should I say. Okay. Oh, return to the field. Oops. Yeah. This map has some very weird field boundaries. Back over on field 2, down at the bottom there, the whole top left corner where there's dirt doesn't actually count as field as far as contracts are concerned. So you have to be very careful if you're doing contracts on that field, because you can end up, as said, not being on registered as being on the field. Torchwood was kind of okay, although I got fed up with it quite quickly. There's a lot of spin-offs that never really worked well. That was one. Oh, there we go. We're done. So, yay. Not much money. So let's check that field out. 37. Oh. That does look pretty much done. We're not going to get another chance at that field, so I could buy that now, I guess. So how much was it? 368, 171. Okay. So 2 new fields. Let's visit that one and see how much that's oh, that's kind of pricey. Oops. And 36. Not so pricey, but we don't have the money for that anymore. Okay, 2 new fields, that's good. so 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everything's doing its thing. Check vehicle status. The yellow truck's going to need a service in 4 days, as is the Land Rover. Oh, 2 days for the Krone. I am going to have to service that sooner rather than later. Okay, that's done. We spent a lot of money today, but we did make a lot of money then. Animals are good. I wonder how many more cows I need. Okay. Let's... Alt S. So, pigs not worth selling. Sheep definitely not worth selling. Cows, very bad price. I don't have sugar cane around this map. Sugar beet's not worth it. Potatoes. Oh, hello. Corn's kind of at peak price. Soybeans similarly. Sunflowers no. Canola no. Barley no. Wheat no. How much corn do we have? 65,000. We've got a couple of fields of corn growing. Okay, let's sell some corn. And this truck's going to need a service in 4 days, so let's do that now. $500, wow, pounds even. I'm just going to take one truck, one tipper. I can't be bothered with all the hassle of pulling the trailer out and attaching the second frame to it. So where are we taking this stuff? Corn. That's corn. We don't have great demand, but we do have Aberdeen grains. Where is the bat signal? Over there. Now, with Blackadder, I was aware of the Elizabethan season, and that actually ran 2 seasons. There was then another season, and then the final season was World War One. What I hadn't realised was there was a season preceding the Elizabethan era show. And I found that out when I bought the collector's set on DVD. Sort of, there's this whole season I wasn't even aware existed. Oops. Wrap it around a fence post. And as far as Rowan Atkinson is concerned, some of the stuff I enjoy, some of his stuff I found not really in my wheelhouse. So, he's the sort of person where, I'll take a look and see, but I don't always find the things he does is funny. Sorry, car. Please don't hit me. Thank you. Well, this should put us back over 200,000. Hello. There we go. Dip left. So we'll do another load. Woo! Yeah, thanks. That's not an easy sell point to get in and out of, especially not if you're hauling a trailer. You can really see the fuel usage on this thing, depending on how heavy I am with the foot on the throttle. Time 11:30. As far as I'm aware, I am not breaking the speed limit, even going that speed down those roads. Even country roads like that in England, the speed limit is generally 60 miles an hour unless there is a speed limit sign, and they typically have repeaters every few hundred yards. Whenever the speed limit changes, they have a large speed sign, but then they will have little repeater every few hundred yards, which are much smaller but are there to serve as a reminder to a driver that you are driving in probably what you would consider not a standard speed limit. Roads like that, 60 miles an hour. Town roads are 30 miles an hour. And if the speed limit is anything other than those general speeds, then the local councils will usually have repeaters, usually on a lamppost, so that you can serve as a reminder that the speed limit here is 40 miles an hour, and you might normally expect it to be 30 or 60 depending on whether you're countryside or a town, but 40 mile an hour limit's not a not a standard speed in the UK, and so they will remind you. Oh yeah. All creatures great and small. That was the vet, wasn't it? That was a show that was on when I was a kid, and so wasn't really into it at the time. Now, for a lot of British shows, they're shown in America a lot later than they were in England. Sometimes tens of years later, which means that people younger than I was, or younger than I am, saw those shows as adults, where when it was originally broadcast, I was a child, and it really wasn't something I was interested in at the time. Monty Python's Flying Circus was when I was very young. Fawlty Towers came later, and that I saw as a teenager. But figure it out as you will. I was pre-teen when Monty Python's Flying Circus came out, and my parents deemed it unsuitable for young children, for obvious reasons. So I only got to see that recently. Oops, I think there's a car behind me. Or not, maybe I just messed up. Oh, there might have been a car turning right, because they tend to swing out wide. Here we are again, another £16,000. Or thereabouts. $15.8. Yeah, close enough. We can turn the bat signal off. There we go. Now, my dad used to watch a show called One Man and His Dog, which is a sheep herding competition. He watched it for quite some time, and my parents decided to get a dog, and the first dog they got was a border collie whose parents were both working sheepdogs. And those dogs have a natural instinct to herd. But she would sit in front of the TV and watch an entire show of One Man and His Dog. My dad did teach her some basic sort of directional commands on whistles, so that he could whistle at her and she would run right, or whistle a different way and she'd run left, and then he'd throw a tennis ball, she'd catch it, bring it back. That was fun until she got old. And she got arthritis and a bit blind. was just funny to watch her sitting and watching one man and his dog. These cousins of hers rounding up sheep. She was fascinated. Okay. So that's some corn sold. We've still got 20,000 litres, and we've got a harvest coming in about, what would it be? Probably about 6 days. I think 21,000 or 20,000 litres or thereabouts will last us before the corn crops mature. Oh, that was the other thing I had to do. I have to make more money. Actually, I have to make more digestate. Drop that there. Break our neck as we swivel around, and we put the truck away. Okay, get out of that, jump to that, because I just remembered there'd be stuff to do here. Oops. Let's lift that. Oops. Let's try again. Lift that up. And dual purpose joystick alters the view angle, and if you push a button where the forks are. Oh, Sean Bean is very good. Yeah, I first saw him in the Sharp series. Actually, my former form tutor at school recommended it. And they did 4... I think it was 4 episodes in a season, and they're 2-hour sort of mini-series, if you like, and each one was a book by Bernard Cornwell, or at least based on the book by Bernard Cornwell as best it could. And now Bernard Cornwell doesn't write history, but he writes stories based in history, and so the backdrop is genuine in spite of the fact the events aren't. So, you know, Sharp was a sort of boy's own swashbuckling hero type of thing. And anyway, the first 2 seasons they filmed on location in Spain and Portugal, but they decided the filming was too expensive, and so the latter seasons were filmed in sort of Estonia, Latvia type of places where, you know, the technical crew and sort of fill-in actors were a lot cheaper. But yes, my form tutor recommended I watch the show, so I did, and then I bought the books and read the books. Thoroughly enjoyable. And then a couple of years ago, well, actually quite a few years ago, but many years after the first run, which ran for, I can't remember, it was about 4 or 5 consecutive years. They they did a 1 or 2 off special where Sharp goes back to India, and that was filmed on location in India, and just had him and Harper from the original series. But if you read the books were Sharp's story starts out with serving under Walsingham, is it? Duke of Wellington. I can't remember what his proper name is. Before he became the Duke of Wellington. So back when he was actually just possibly a colonel, maybe a general in the King's Army, and he served with him in India, and then during the Napoleonic Wars, Wellington was reassigned to the Portugal Peninsula, where he was just supposed to run an orderly withdrawal of British troops from the advancing French, and he kind of won, and the whole thing turned around, and from there he pushed Napoleon back to France, and that happened. But the events that Sharp got up to during that period, some of them happened, but not by one man, and not by not in the time frame it happened. So one of the stories was called Sharp's Eagle, where Sharp manages to capture a French eagle, which is basically much like the colours on that regiment would carry, the flag. And basically, what in that time the king would effectively commission the regiment and would bless the regimental flag, and so long as the regimental flag was carried on the field, the men would be brave, and if the enemy captured the regimental colours, then that was a huge disgrace, and chances are the men would run away, because obviously they were beaten because the flag was lost. And the French didn't so much have regimental flags as they had eagles, and a British unit did capture a French eagle, but it was about 2 years after the events in Sharp's Eagle. But the other events happening in the story of sieges of forts or whatever, or that type of thing, all of the background events were effectively did happen. I did like that show, and then since then I think he's died practically everything he's been in. He was in James Bond and he died. He was in Game of Thrones and died. Lord of the Rings, he died. I think it was Train Sim 17. He did the voiceover for that. And there were jokes in the community that before the end of the year he'd be run over by a train. Because you can't have Sean Bean in something and have him survive to the end of the show. Oh yes, they did go quite genuine. There was another show. It wasn't particularly good in America when they tried it, but in England, there was a show called Life on Mars, which involved a policeman from modern day, and somehow he was transported back to the 1970s. Yeah, kind of preposterous setting. However, it gave them an excuse to do a 70s police show in the year 2000. And with all the sort of stereotypical stuff that went on back in the 70s involving the police. And they had old restored cars from the era. And if you were very observant, you would have noticed that the camera angles were all high to low. So like I'm currently showing here, you were looking down on the scene like this, and there you never saw the roofs of the houses, because if you saw the roofs of the houses, you'd see all the satellite dishes and cell phone masts and stuff like that. They were very careful to avoid filming anything like that. So it was very, very genuine 1970s looking. You kind of get to appreciate at least, the film crew and the director for filming a show in modern era without it obviously being modern era. All of the vehicles were 1970s, and chances of finding in 1970s vehicles in good condition vanishingly small, and yet they managed it, because obviously people remember the cars of the 70s if you were living back then. But if you find one, especially in England, the fenders are, one fender's orange and the rest of the car's green, except the passenger door, which is blue, because it's all, recovered because from scrap, because the original vehicle, half of it rusted through. They obviously had a team of restorers that were able to find some reasonably good condition vehicles and then make them look as if they were genuinely brand new 1970s vehicles. Must admit, this is a lot easier with an auto load front forks. Yes, I have done this job. This is what, 5th year fifth season year that I've been playing this farm, and so the first 4 years I was doing this with 300 bales a year, using the normal Stoll front loader forks. That's painful. Okay. Oops. Okay, let's go check the... Oh, don't do that over there. Don't go over there. Let's go this way first. $500,000 with 62% full. And I think it's why British shows do well, in spite of the fact they generally have low budget, is because they pay attention to the detail. And, you know, they try to avoid stuff on camera for sort of historical settings that would not have been in the scene. There's one show I watched recently, Foyle's War, Foyles, and he is a detective during the Second World War. He was regular army in the First World War, and yeah, he's a little bit old. He could probably have gone back in, but I think there were issues, and so he was kept on as a copper because people needed policemen during the Second World War. You know, just because there's a war going on doesn't mean that crime stops happening. Although he had issues with the Secret Service and the likes, or the intelligence services and the likes, because obviously they had operations going on that he was getting in the way of investigating crime.